Data protection is a top priority with today's work-from-home workforce. However, current data loss prevention tools inadequately protect data in cloud or SaaS offerings from insider threats. Secure Circle automatically protects data as it leaves SaaS services such as GitHub, AWS, and Salesforce. The protection is transparent to users and works with any application to persistently protect data, even source code. Secure your data with Secure Circle's Zero Trust Data Protection. Begin your 30-day free trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. Uptycs has built a platform for SQL-powered security analytics. Extending the OS query agent, Uptycs collects, aggregates, and analyzes a wide range of system data and makes that available to solve multiple security challenges. Their solution provides visibility across Linux, macOS, Windows, containers, and cloud workloads. Their customers are using the Uptycs platform for fleet visibility, intrusion detection, investigation, and audit and compliance. Visit securityweekly.com/Uptycs and be one of the first to see how they've mapped over 500 behavioral rules to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. In our upcoming webcast and technical trainings, you can learn how to build a risk-based vulnerability management program with Kenna Security. You can also learn how to prevent phishing scams with Great Horn, and how to move beyond vulnerability scan to vulnerability fixed with Vulcan.io. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/webcast, see what we have coming up, or go to securityweekly.com/on-demand to register for the previously recorded ones. Joining us today from 7X is Chief Strategist Matt Barnett. After years in IT, performing network and systems administration, software development, and architecting cloud migrations, Matt began to focus his efforts on cybersecurity. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Matt, how did you get started in this wonderful field? Please do tell the story more so than your bio mentions.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I actually showed up as an IT programmer for doing PHP and MySQL. My first day, my first job right out of college, and the day I showed up, their systems administrator quit, and they said, "Well, Matt, you were going to be a programmer, and good luck." So spent the 2 weeks that he had given notice learning everything I could, and ended up taking over full system administration for them, and kind of realized that there were probably some newer, better ways out there, helped them migrate a lot of their on-prem infrastructure out to the cloud. And this was kind of right around the time that AWS was gaining some traction. So, did a full lift and shift out to AWS. We replaced a lot of their LAN and internal infrastructure. Unfortunately, we had some security issues that I ended up falling in love with fixing. And so I fixed them all and then fixed myself right out of a job. But, needless to say, there's no shortage of security full-time out there. So I landed in a consulting role, and I was there for about 5 years or so. And, myself and Ryan Bradbury started our own practice shortly thereafter, and here we are.
Sweet. And today we're talking about multi-factor authentication. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what's your take on multi-factor authentication today? I mean, I believe it's something you have to have, but there's like a million ways to do it. So what's your recommendations, Matt?
Yeah, so, I think just doing it is a good start, right? We're not seeing as much adoption as we probably should. And so as we kind of look at the different mediums that are out there, people are starting to put recommendations for it, saying, "Oh, you should use this one or use that one." And I think the message should just be use one, right? We'll figure out which one may be best later, but we need to get more than just I think it was 11% that Microsoft said for their Microsoft 365 product in terms of adoption. Now we have people coming out and saying, "Well, you shouldn't use SMS for multi-factor because that's unsafe." And I don't know that I agree with that logic completely. I think that really we just need to start getting people on it. So
I think even if you're going to do something like SMS, I agree. I think it's better than nothing, certainly. And you just have to understand that when you enable it. But the thing that gets me is you can enable multi-factor authentication. I'm curious what that 11% is. And it may challenge the users in a certain way. They use something like Microsoft 365, but in other ways, it won't give you the challenge. And that's like inside the configuration. Matt, do you have advice for people to do the testing to say, okay, I've enabled it, so when anyone logs into Microsoft 365, it should challenge them? But I've often found there's other pathways that I don't get the challenge. Other ways to like audit that configuration and do testing. I think that's really kind of the next thing we need to recommend to people.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Specifically, doing penetration testing for a living, I come across this all the time. The amount of organizations that leverage Microsoft 365 is pretty staggering.
Yep.
So we almost kind of come up with the same recipe over and over again. We do the password guessing, and then we get, some valid sets of credentials, and we go to log in, and then we're presented with the MFA. And my first step when I see that come up is I try to use another mail product that doesn't use the Microsoft direct login. So portal.office.com is going to take you right through Microsoft's, process. But if you use things like Apple Mail or some of the other, mail products through Exchange Web Services or ActiveSync, certain multi-factor like Duo doesn't support those types of streams. And so the recommendation comes down, we'll just disable those endpoints. But that's what we find a lot is, when MFA is not ubiquitous in its deployment, it's because the MFA doesn't support some of the alternate access streams like EWS and ActiveSync.
Yeah, I find that to be a pretty like once you get past we've enabled MFA, that's the next problem that they have to deal with. And I feel like it's so common. People should just like do it, right? There should be a set of recommendations and a test guide that people should go through to accomplish that.
Yeah. And kind of back to what I was saying, that 11% was a number that Microsoft had posted earlier in the year when they looked over the amount of enterprise accounts that they had and how many of them had MFA deployed. And they statted, 11%. And so I think you're right. The first challenge is turn it on, right? And then the second one is make sure that it actually works. And that's the big one, right? Is I think when you do the MFA through Microsoft, right, and the SMS specifically, I see that work kind of across all of the platforms and all the endpoints that they expose.
Yeah, I still found exceptions on that recently, which is weird. And I'm not a Microsoft expert by any stretch, so I couldn't tell you like what configuration was missing, but I'm guessing there's some configuration missing in there.
Yeah, I have so many frustrations with MFA. Either of you just let me know if you need one of those rants inserted anywhere in here, and I just let me know.
Well, I'll start with one rant, and that is so let's say you're going to move from SMS to something else. If that something else is an authenticator app that lives on your phone, how are we doing today with how that transfers to the new phone? Because back in the day, I would use that, then I'd get a new phone because
that's on my list,
right? I'm a tech nerd, and so I'm always like getting a new phone, and then all of a sudden I'd go to my authenticator app, and it didn't transfer over, and so I basically abandoned the authenticator app, and I use YubiKey because that doesn't matter what phone I'm using, and I just carry YubiKeys with me. But that's not. If you've got more than 10,000 people in your organization and you're doing a physical token, that's problematic for a lot of reasons, as we probably all have experienced in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of share the tech sentiment with you, right? I think I'm probably the yearly iPhone guy. I used to be the wait in line guy. Now I'm just the order it by mail guy.
Yeah.
But every time I get a new one, right, on a yearly basis, I have to go into Duo and I have to go into Google Authenticator. I have to go in and kind of resync all of these tokens. And that's kind of hugely problematic, especially if you're in, consulting, or if you're in some sort of, other industry where you have multiple keys. And I've got to reach out to 10 different clients. I got a new phone. I'm going to have to resync it. Right. Or, does that also open up social engineering attacks? Can I call and pretend to be somebody, get my token resynced? Is that
also, you think about users, maybe they're traveling and lost their phone, or maybe they're at home and they lost their phone, or got smashed, or they need to just take that SIM card out and pop it in another phone to be productive. Now you've got this extra step of that authenticator app.
Yeah, the other one, I thought this was kind of interesting. If you look at that blog post that Alex Weiner from Microsoft wrote about abandoning the SMS, somebody posted a comment in there that said, what if you work in a DoD job and you're in one of those secure confidential information facilities where you have to leave your phone in a bin out front, and I've got to go to log in, then they send the push notification. I have to lock my computer as per policy. I have to remove my CAC card per policy. I have to run back to the front desk, get my phone, hope that I can push it in time, come back through security, get back to my terminal, and get back into the computer. So sometimes, those push notifications aren't always, or those time-based tokens aren't always practical for every organization.
Agreed. Have you seen organizations have success with physical tokens that aren't on your smartphone?
I have, and it's funny, I've done physical penetration testing too. And one of the funny things I always laugh about is, you get into the IT den of an organization, you open one of the drawers just to see what you find. And, usually it's ID cards and RFID cards. And sometimes you open the drawer and it's just this, treasure trove of hard tokens.
That's awesome.
You just grab a handful of those and you figure it out later. But
right.
I've seen a lot less of that than I have the virtual ones.
Yeah, I remember the last InfoSec World I was at. This must have been 2008's InfoSec World. We were on lunch break, and I happened to sit down at a table with a lady who had no less than six RSA, like old school 6-digit RSA hard tokens on a keychain. And I had to ask her what she did. And it turned out that she worked for a company that contracted to different government entities. And she worked with 6 different clients, so she needed 6 different RSA tokens. And huge keychain with 6 of those things. Like, I can't imagine how often she has to call up somebody and resync those tokens. And, I don't know if you remember having to resync tokens.
It was awful. It was awful from the user perspective and the admin perspective. It was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just consultants or people that outsource their services to other companies. Consider being a comptroller or a controller for an organization where you've got control over the 10, 15 banks, or what if you're a PE firm and you deal with all of these banks and they all have hard tokens. And so you just have this, again, regardless of your industry, you may end up amassing a whole slew of them, and 2 of them that are from the same, manufacturer. So now which one do I use? And you enter the wrong one too many times. And yeah, it's a mess.
Well, in what happens, what I do, and I can see enterprises doing this as well, is you go, all right, we've got YubiKey, and you can get a YubiKey. And if you want to go to third-party services and authenticate, there's only a subset that support an actual YubiKey token. So then you fall back to, do I want SMS or do I want to use an authenticator app? And then what if I lose my phone or my token, I still have SMS as a backup? So you basically end up with all 3. And I don't believe that's really the best thing in terms of security, is to have all 3. But that's personally what I end up with. And I don't think it's the greatest thing for security.
Yeah, and you can even go a step further. Have you seen now where they'll give you 10 codes to save to your local disk?
That too.
The backup codes.
Yep.
So now you got 10 of those,
and that's important
somewhere.
Like some of these, I've found, like, as they add multi-factor to some of these, and this is, to me, this is the biggest problem, is the inconsistency between apps and services, where they forget to give you an out in case you screw up. And like I reformatted a phone to rebuild it, and I had 2FA turned on my Steam account, and they had no way for you to recover from SteamGuard. You had to email support. And then support had to, they didn't even have the validation. They didn't even have the process set up for their support folks. So it took me like 2 months to get back into my Steam account, just because I reformatted my phone and forgot to disable SteamGuard before doing that.
To Matt's point, that opens up social engineering attempts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Most of what they asked me, other people could have known.
Yep.
Yeah, and you may not even need to know, right? What if you called the user and told the user you were having a problem and said, hey, we've got so we do these penetration tests, and social engineering is a component of that. a lot of times what we'll do is, we'll successfully guess their password. And then, based on recon, we'll get a contact number, or we'll call the 1-800 number and forward into the user. And we'll tell them, hey, we're from Microsoft, or we're from Google, or we're from wherever, we're trying to migrate your account, or we're trying to do this, that, or the other. We need you to, kind of provide us that token just so we can, do the lift and shift. And that tends to be pretty effective. But also, and probably equally effective or more effective, is the push notifications, right? We've conditioned users to just accept the push all day long, right? Every time they authenticate. So when I see text message as a MFA come across the screen, I get depressed. When I see the push notification, I just hit the button and I hope the user, accepts the phantom push on the back end. And we've been pretty successful with that.
That's interesting.
So I have a couple quick recommendations based on my own stupidity and failures. I mean, I kind of feel like that's
we've all
my
been
job.
there, but we've all been there, Adrian.
It's my job to like try out all the things, and one thing I'd recommend is I decided last year to buy a whole bunch of security keys and try them out. And every now and then I get asked for a security key and I have no idea which one to plug in. Because it doesn't tell you. And again, here's the inconsistency, because some services let you name the key. Because I think it's important to be able to. So like this is a solo key, which is one of the most inexpensive ones, USB-C, and I love that it's got a tactile button there.
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, you're right. The YubiKey button is not great because it's not tactile.
I find that more pleasing than just, there's no moving parts here.
Right.
But I had one of these where the USB-C connector just ripped right off. Like I plugged it in and it just popped right off. The solder joints failed and the wires tore. And some of these services will only let you sync a single key with it. Like AWS is still that way. Like most of them, you can join as many keys as you want to that. But if you lose one of these and you're dependent on just a single key, or preferably, I'd like to have one that I leave at home and one that I take with me.
Yeah, but Adrian, the tactile button too, as much as we like that from a user experience, if that fails, you're not going to be able to authenticate either.
Right.
What do they always say with backups? It's 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you look at these, so this just has like a silicone cover on it, and beneath it's just a breadboard, and that thing is that thing is just soldered on there. Whereas this is all the circuitry is inside a mold here, so it's much stronger. You've got this, I assume it's ABS plastic or something like that. So now and that's why I take these hits for other people, so I can tell them my experiences. Not terribly durable. I got maybe I'd say 700,000 clicks out of my other one of these before it failed on me.
That's interesting. So, Matt, what do you find in most enterprises to be the most effective in terms of multi-factor authentication?
Certainly Microsoft has an overwhelming majority of market share for corporate and enterprise accounts, and especially in the kind of small to medium business, which is where we kind of have our niche. And most of what we see is the 6-digit code from Microsoft come across, and so I think part of that is because it's still the default option in Microsoft. If you're to turn SMS on, or MFA on rather, for the organization, I think it defaults to the SMS version with a recommendation to use the Authenticator app. But like I said, certainly when I are doing penetration testing, I find that those are the hardest ones to get past, because I don't have access to that phone. And I get why NIST kind of came out with this back in 2016, and the cell phone networks kind of having some of the, not as much security as they may have now. And, but the risk is fairly low, I think, relative to the risk of not having MFA at all.
Yeah, completely agree. And cell phone providers have gotten better in terms of protecting the user's account. We have PIN codes now, and I think they've done maybe some training. They've definitely helped curb the threat.
Yeah, they have. And, when we see these iterations, we went from 3G to 4G, now we're at 5G, and incrementally we're getting better, and security is always kind of folded in there somewhere. And, I don't know that 5G made significant security strides from 3G, but it's certainly better. And, the apps and the phones themselves have gotten better, right? Mm-hmm. The access to permissions that you now need to give a particular app. It's not just install the app and it's got access to everything. You got to tell it, hey, yeah, you can have access to my SMS, you can have access to my contacts, etc. So I think a lot of that segmentation within the phone is reducing a lot of the risk, right? Not every app can see your text messages. So I think we're starting to mitigate in other ways too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point. Adrian?
One recommendation I've got on if you do have to use the 6-digit codes, the one-time passwords, I'd recommend the app Authy. Syncs to the cloud, allows you to, of course, it's all protected with the password. It's like a password database for your second factor authenticators. And you can store them all in one place, just like Google Authenticator. But if you get a new phone or a tablet or something like that you also want to be able to get those codes on, Authy makes it pretty easy to do that. I think there's a few others that do that as well. And actually, what I've ended up using now is I use 1Password, and 1Password has the ability to store your one-time passwords. So just for consolidation's sake, and of course, I've got all the protection turned on in that 1Password database because it's got everything in it. I think I've got over 1,200 entries in there, and and the nice thing is
1Password also doesn't use the clipboard like LastPass does.
It uses it, but differently.
Yeah.
Purges it after a really short period of time, and I even think that might be configurable. Mm-hmm. But I love it too because I use 1Password as well. And when when the QR code comes up on the screen, I do both. Right, I take the 1Password tool over top of it, and then I use my phone, so I have it in two places. Kind of back to that 2 is 1.
Not a bad idea. So that's a smart idea because if one blows up, if you can't get into 1Password for some reason, you've got a backup.
Exactly. Yep.
Smart.
Outstanding. Yeah, I think something's better than nothing, right? When we talk about password managers and multi-factor authentication, something is better than nothing, certainly.
Yeah, and I think that should be the message, right? Mm-hmm. Again, it kind of back to this article maybe stirred the pot a little bit, or maybe there's a little bit of a gaslighting because I think ultimately where we end up is in a passwordless environment anyway. And you already see Google kind of pioneering some of this stuff with the phone kind of verifying or validating and then not needing the password.
Right.
So maybe that's where we're heading, and maybe we can do it in an effective way, and I totally support that. But I think the message should be MFA, not which MFA.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah. Once we get that 11%, closer to 100%, then we can start obsessing over what kind of MFA and
passwordless
how resilient it is and all that. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. The other stat I saw was kind of back from January of this year, but as we're kind of rolling into January of next year, it was 1.5 million accounts were compromised in January of 2020. And that was, I think they said that represented 0.5% of all of the enterprise accounts in Microsoft 365. So it's not like phishing attacks and email compromise are going away anytime soon.
Agreed. Matt, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly. It was nice having you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks. Always a pleasure. And I love the podcast too. So, fan as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, stay tuned. Clayton Fields and Michael Asraf from Vicarious are joining us next. Stay tuned.